Hello, and welcome to a new series of videos called Incubate. And Incubate is going to follow along myself and my teammates as we attempt to build a software MVP in 60 days. If you don't know what an MVP is, it's a minimum viable product, which maybe on a future episode I'll go into what that actually means. But for the purposes of today, you just need to know that this series of videos will follow us making software, a brand new software product. And my name is Matt Ferrugia, and I'll be doing the videos. And without further ado, let's get started on day one. So as we speak, it's the beginning of July in 2019, and for various reasons, the company I run, which is an agency, and we build mobile and web apps for corporate clients, we have decided that now is the precisely correct time for us to build a product of our own. Now, if truth be told, the reasons for why we're building a product now are really not the best reasons in the world. It's because we have some availability of a development team. And before I go any further, please take as a warning: never ever do this. This is by far the worst ever reason to build anything. Basically because you got some time on your hands. However, bear with me because I think this is going to be really good. You're going to enjoy it, and I honestly think there's a pretty good chance that we're going to succeed at this, and we're going to build something that people want, that we want, first of all, and that other people want. In fact, if we go into that a little bit, when we were faced with this decision as a team to build something, we took a step back and we said, what on earth should we build? So can we come up with an idea? Can we be the next the next Facebook? What sort of an idea would it take for us to be successful? So there's a few choices here, right? So one thing you can do, if you're an agency, and we're kind of, we do user experience design, and we do engineering and build, and we've been doing it for a long time. We do maybe 9 years or something, right? So we've seen a lot of software products being built. We've been involved in them. We've helped other people build theirs, and we're pretty good at it. So one of the things you can do is you can decide, what we'll do is we'll build on spec some sort of software product that hopefully somebody will want, and we'll own the IP, and then in a future date, another client will come along and we'll build the second version of that, and it'll be really super easy because we'll have all the IP, and so that's one strategy. So you can decide to kind of generate some internal IP, and a lot of agencies and service businesses do that. The second option you can do is you can decide to go to one of your clients that you already have a relationship with, and you can say, hey, what problem do you have that we could build for you? We're interested in building a software product. We want to get close to somebody who has real problems, and we could, you don't have to pay for it. You could become our first customer. And then the third option is that you could basically decide to build something that you yourself want to use. And that's sometimes called eating your own dog food. For reasons I'm not entirely sure why anyone would want to eat their own dog food, but that's what it's called. I didn't make that up. So we had to rethink about this. And given that we had quite a small amount of time to decide what we wanted to do, we pushed forward, and we thought by far the least risky thing for us to do is to eat our own dog food here. So we need to be able to get close to somebody who has a real problem, and we need to do that quite quickly. And we decided that the people we could get closest to was ourselves. So in that regard, I think we made a pretty good decision to look around at the stuff that we do day in, day out, and have been doing for many years, and we're pretty good at, and find an area where there's a real bit of pain that potentially we could build a solution to. So let me go. Here we go. So what we decided to build for this Incubate project is we want to create the place where product managers define software products. So we spend a lot of time working with product managers. Sometimes we do that role ourselves, or we do the product management role. But effectively, most of the work we do is after the bulk of a project, when you're doing a software development project, is after you've decided roughly what to build. So you kind of figure out what the scope is, and you work with a development team and designers to get that stuff built. So we've decided to go look a little bit before that process, where we spent a lot of our time and try and figure out what it is that is useful for product managers when they're defining software products. So essentially, what is the pain in this process? Now, obviously, product managers they have to come up with the list of prioritized features that a product has to contain. And I'm kind of, I'm glossing over the details of the product manager role. But the question is, why, when we're not necessarily product managers day in, day out, our whole company is not product managers. We're a pretty small company, but we're not all product managers. We're designers and developers and project managers and a bit of product management thrown in, and QAs as well. Why on earth would we, what do we know about that pain, the pain that those users have? Now, actually, we know quite a lot. The pain that we see, if you're a company who builds products for other people, the pain that you really see a lot, and I'm not going to lie, we've seen this pain several times before and recently. And that pain is the pain of managing a change in scope. So if someone comes to us and says, hey, Matt, I really would like to build this software product, and it's kind of roughly has to do these things. How much will it cost? That's what they always ask. And I say, well, roughly it'll cost this much. And then they go away and they kind of figure out where they're going to get the money to do that. And then they make a commitment and they say, great, I'm going to do this. So here's the money. Please don't spend any more than that amount of money. And let's get started, which is great, right? So I understand that it's a bit like getting a renovation done on your house. You don't know exactly all the issues you're going to hit, but you know how much you want to spend roughly. Now, not dissimilar to a renovation on a house, you really don't want to you don't want to have some massive budget overrun. So what will happen is, as and when things get changed in a project, you've got to try and change the scope in a way that doesn't mean it's just going to take twice as long as you originally committed. And when you work in a service business, what that really means is you've got to allow for change in scope without necessarily allowing for a massive change in budget. And that's a pretty tricky thing to pull off. And we're not too bad at doing that, but what we've discovered is our pain is that when we allow that to happen, what was actually agreed and what was changed to be agreed, and as the requirements change over time, it becomes increasingly hard. I mean, really quite hard to know who said we're going to change this feature, what did they agree to change, when did that agreement happen, does this now, is it basically, are they getting that, are they getting something else? So the pain that we have, and it's a very real pain, is how do you really manage those changes in requirements for a project? How do you manage the change for scope? And I don't mean manage in a kind of old school, requirements management process. Back in the day, when I say back in the day, like up until relatively recently, up until the agile transformation of software, where we would do waterfall type projects where requirements all get nailed down and then they'd be passed off. We do some design, they get passed off, and we do some build. In those days, you would kind of write some massive requirements document, right? And it would live in a requirements management tool, potentially, or Rational Doors or something like that. And those products still exist, particularly for regulated environments. But in the kind of software startup-y, agile, innovation-driven world, which is all the rage these days, that's just not going to cut it. You're not going to be able to write a kind of fixed set of requirements, chisel them out of a tablet of stone and take them down off the mountain and pass them over and say, this is what must be built. It's just not going to work because by definition, Agile has to allow for some sort of change in that. So, and when you build software, I mean, that's cool. You want to change, but the pain is how do you manage that change, right? So if we've agreed to do 5 things and halfway through we change 3 of them. How do you really manage that process? And managing that process for a service business is really important. But the observation we have is that that's actually something that's really quite tricky for all companies who are building software products to do. How to choose what to build next, and how to track those changes. So that's the pain that we're really trying to solve here. So what are the goals? So very, very, very just plucked out of thin air. The goals we have there are 2 of them really. So goal number 1, MVP launch in 60 days. So as I say, we're at the beginning of July at the moment, and by the 1st of September, we want to have launched an MVP. And then once we've launched that MVP, we want to get to a target of £20,000 of monthly recurring revenue by the end of the year. That's 180 days. Now, I kind of just plucked these numbers out of the air, but the truth is, if we're still kind of navel gazing around what to build after 60 days, we've definitely spent too long on it. We'll be busy on to other things. And if we do build it and we launch it, and by 180 days we've not got some real money for it, then fundamentally it's probably something that people don't want. So I feel like this is a reasonable kind of rule of thumb for us to run this product launch by. So having said all that, look, here's our goals, and this is the pain that we're going to deal with, where do we go from there? Right. So I've been doing some research around this area, obviously, some background research. And one of the things we like to do is we like to come up with this product statement. So here's a product statement for the Incubate product. I don't know that it's going to be called Incubate, by the way. That's just a name that we're using internally. It's a name we're using for this series of videos. There'll probably be a website, getincubate.com, to follow along. But fundamentally, when it launches, it might be called something else. But let's just imagine this is the product statement for Incubate, and this is something that we do for we've done for other products. It's pretty useful. It's kind of, the way I've heard it described is it's meant to act as like a North Star, right? So it's meant to be the thing that really kind of drives the product vision. So what is the vision? So in order to build better products, right? That's what we want. We want better software products in the world. Our product will solve founder and product managers' problem. So that's who. So the product managers, and in startups typically that will still be the founder. Their problem of specifying which product features the development team should build next. So I'm not in love with that as a user problem. It feels a little bit descriptive rather than like what's the niggle. But anyway, let's go with it. So which features they should build next. And the strategy is we'll give them a process and tools to plan, prioritize, track, and adjust potential product features before and during development. And how do we know it works? Well, when our active product managers, so I'm just going to assume some people won't be active, but at least 3/4 of the ones who are active should be using it once a week. I mean, this is really a place where product managers are meant to live. There are some competitors in this space. We've done some research around what alternatives people use. They use they just use spreadsheets. They use free tools like Trello. There are some products as well, like roadmap-focused products like Aha, or visual products like Miro. But yeah, fundamentally, I think this is a reasonable place for us to start. I think we'll probably iterate on this. Feels a little bit simplistic at the moment, but this is not a bad way to kind of articulate who we're going after, who's expected to use it, what it's supposed to do, etc. So next, I'm going to talk very briefly about some product themes. So having kind of said, this is a sort of broad brush statement of what this product's supposed to do. And there's obviously going to be some features that the product has to have. But before we dive into the features, I had to think about what kind of thematically, what do I want this to do? Now, the first one is left of Jira, right? If you don't know what Jira is basically, development teams use it to create issues, to track issues that they're going to work on when they're building a software product. I'll give you a look at Jira in a second. But essentially, you can think of it as there are tickets that a team works on, and that's how we track. That's how we do kind of work and task tracking commonly in development teams. There are alternatives to Jira. Some people use GitHub issue management. Some people use target process, a whole bunch of other stuff. But fundamentally, when the development team is working on their tasks, they track it with a project management tool. And what we want Incubate to be is we want it to live before that. We want it to live left of Jira. So I think Jira and their competitors do a pretty great job. I mean, they're not widely loved, but let's just say they do a pretty great job of um, orchestrating what development teams and tracking what development teams need to do. I don't think we want to get in there and compete, but for us, we've tried several times to use Jira as this kind of product management bridge, and it's always kind of let us down. It just doesn't quite fit with the way we want to do it. So we're going to live left of Jira, and we're hopefully going to be better than Jira and the alternatives for doing that. The second theme I want to kind of make sure we do bring to the market is traceability throughout the process. So one of the things we do when we're working through user experience is we always like to talk about how one area links to another. So let's say we do some user interviews, and the user interviews lead to an understanding of a problem that a user might have, and to solve that problem, we then describe a user story that could fix that problem, and then we take that user story and eventually it gets kind of turned into something that the development team will use. And there's very little traceability through that whole process. So I want to make sure that we build in as first principle traceability from like where did this requirement actually come from. The third thing rather is real world change tracking. I have no idea why I wrote real world change tracking on this as opposed to virtual world change tracking. I guess what I mean by that is when I get a phone call and we agree, yeah, you're right, we'll change this feature, or when we get an email and it leads us to change what we're actually building, I know from previous experience, we're not very good at having the traceability of where that change came from. And you can use tools which say, well, you know, on the 5th of November, you change the title from X to Y, but it doesn't really tell you why that happened. So I'd really like to kind of get at why changes happen, because the changes are important, they have to happen, but not knowing where they came from, you inevitably forget like 3 weeks later. So that's one thing I'd definitely like to look at. Fourth, APIs at the core. It's kind of a sort of build principle. If you're building your tool or your product on top of your own APIs, then potentially it becomes easy to integrate with other things. And lastly, teaches you best practice. I don't honestly think product management is massively well understood. I think agile software development is better understood than product management at the moment. Product management has to happen in pretty much every software product company that exists. So I think leading with examples is a pretty good way to go with this. So there's our broad product themes. I seem to have a massive amount of trouble with navigating this particular keynote. Let's get through day one to do. So just before we kind of wrap up, we're at the end of day one actually. And I have done some research, obviously, to get to this point. So it's not quite true to say all this has been done in one day. It definitely hasn't been. It's been over the last two weeks or so. But let's see where we are as of today. So the first thing we want to do is obviously choose the idea, which we've done. We've talked about that. Do some research. So I have definitely done some research. The way I like to do research is I kind of just start to stick things into a Google Doc. So you can see a kind of broader version of the vision here, the goals, who the market is. The product statement was originally written in here. A few other things about integrations, some themes. We've got some initial potential features. I've looked at the kind of sales model, go-to-market strategy, and some research, just broader research. There's really good information on the Intercom blog, intercom.com. If you're interested in product management, they've got a bunch of stuff. And we've also started speaking to some people about it and getting their feedback. So that's, tick, I have done some research, definitely not enough research. One thing to be aware, I mean, when I said at the beginning, definitely do not do this. The reason I'd say definitely do not do this is because, well, twofold. So reason number one is, as an engineer or an engineering company, you're always thinking about rushing to build stuff. Any problem that comes up, you think, I'll just build it, and I'll just start building it before I really know if anybody wants it, before I really know what it should be. You tend to rush towards building, and we've done that here, and we've done it for all the wrong reasons. But I'm just going to kind of give us a buy on that one. The second one is you should really do proper user research to kind of figure out what the problems are. And now we're using ourselves as a proxy for a user that has one plus in that we're very easy to access, and many minuses. We're basically amplifying our own biases. But let's pretend that's also not a big problem. There's various reasons why we don't have access to a designer at the moment, and we don't. So we just got to get on. We've got to get this stuff done. We've got to start building. I've got engineers waiting. Ding, ding, ding. A whole litany of of bad ideas from a commercial perspective. But by the time we get to day 14, you're gonna have forgotten how bad an idea this was. Fingers crossed. So so we've done some research. As you can see, we have enough of a features list to start. So what I did was, let's just have a quick look here. So I started building a feature list in Google Sheets, kind of like, what do I need? I've got engineers available today. They want to work on this. They need to work on this, frankly. And what am I going to get them to build? So I kind of vomited out a list of features that were kind of, there's not a lot of them. And to be fair, this is the competitor for our tool, right? This is what we will be competing with, just using a spreadsheet. And that's a problem, right? Because spreadsheets are infinitely flexible. So when you're competing with a spreadsheet, you really got to add some value, which is why we have to have some of those product themes like traceability and change management to be able to be valuable. So I quickly wrote up some features, and essentially, if you were to read this is like an authenticated version of this spreadsheet. That's all this is. You'll be able to view features, create new features, edit or delete features, add the user role that the feature applies to, add some epics, etc. And then I took those and I dropped them into Jira. So you can have a look here. Here's some epics around here, and this is essentially how the development team gets started. Now, there are some problems with directly linking user stories to what development teams do. It's not an amazing one-to-one link often, and I'll definitely talk about that on a future episode because it's one of the problems here. But for the purposes of this, I have just popped this into the backlog, and we have an active sprint and we're kind of working on stuff. So in job one, I have gotten out from under the feet of the development team and I've created them a tiny little bit of a runway of work to do. So enough of a features list to start and dev board populated. So at the end of day one, yep, we have an idea. It's a pretty good idea. I'm pretty happy. Why do I think this is a good idea? That's a good question. When you have the ability to build things, and we're pretty good at building things, designing and building things, you want to try and pick a product. And this is what we've done. We've picked a product where we believe there's low market risk. So we think this is a thing that people want. There are some other things. There are some other products in the market which you don't think meet the needs. They don't solve the pains. But we're very, very sure the market is there. Because we know pretty much all software product businesses are going to be doing the product management role. It's not optional. Right? You have to choose what to build, and if you choose badly, it's pretty catastrophic. So in that regard, we don't think from a simplistic point of view there's really a huge amount of market risk. But what there is obviously execution risk. So what we've done is we've chosen an idea where there's execution risk, but we think we're quite good at executing. So tick, we've got an idea. We've done what I would consider the bare minimum of research, and we've solved a sort of tactical problem we have in the short term, which is, can I get enough of this feature list defined to get the dev board populated so the developers who are there can actually get started. And when you start development, to be fair, there's a certain amount of work that gets done, which is preparatory work. It's not actually feature building yet, although very quickly the teammates I have will get on to feature builds because they're super amazing. And then next, so by the next episode, what do I want to have achieved? Well, I got to plan 2 weeks worth of build. Now, the reason I've got to plan 2 weeks worth of build is one, the development team sprints are 2 weeks normally. Maybe we could short them to one. but they kind of we really want to have a fixed amount of scope for them to work on during a sprint. Otherwise, it's not really agile. It's probably not agile anyway, but it's a worthy goal. And secondly, an even more important goal, I am on holiday next week. For the first time in a while, I'm going on holiday. I'm out of the country for a week. I do not want to be looking at this, so I want to make sure we've got this runway set out in front of us. Goal 2, I need to start the wireframes. I said to you before, we don't have a designer at the moment, which is a pain, but because we don't have a designer, it's really important that that we find a way to describe what this should look at. So what I'll do when I'm talking about the wireframes, maybe in the next episode, I will tell you what my cunning plan, my not very cunning plan has been in order to be able to build this without a designer in place at the moment. But I need to get started on that because pretty soon the dev team will be saying to me, "Hey Matt, what should this look like?" Third, I really need to get some better research done, continue my research, try to do the proxy for having spoken to users. I would love to think that by launching this series of videos, we'll start to build an audience. That audience will tell me, "Matt, stop, you're building a terrible product. Put these features in and we will definitely become customers of yours." That would be a nice thing to imagine would happen. So I'm going to continue with my research. And lastly, I really need to migrate. I need to migrate from the spreadsheet. So if you think about what I'm doing just now is I am building my feature list here and I'm transferring it to here. And even today, I felt the pain because I kind of figured, these user roles are probably personas, right? I'm probably going to have persona as a feature. So I'd quite like to take the persona. I'd quite like to change user role to persona and then manage persona as the thing that we have in here rather than user role. But I'd already copied and pasted them and wrote them all out here in Jira, and I kind of figured, do I really want to edit everywhere it says user role to be persona? So I don't. So long story short, I am keen, I am motivated for us to build our product to the level where it represents this particular feature list, and I'm going to start using it. And that's why that's my conceit, and I will readily admit it is a conceit. But my conceit is that I think people are going to find it interesting for us to build a product and for us to use the product to build a product. So you will see all that is happening and the state of the art. So I wouldn't hold your breath for that to happen in the next 1 or 2 days, but definitely pretty soon I want to migrate away from this spreadsheet. So that's pretty much all for now. It's the end of the day. I'm going to go and pick up my kids. It's the end of day 1, and hopefully you'll join us for the next episode of Incubate.